In today's video, I'm going to be building this bar top gaming arcade cabinet and reliving a little bit of my childhood. I'm going to include files so that you can build your own cabinet. So let's get started. Emily, is it my turn yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
Now this project started where so many of my builds start, and that's in Google SketchUp. One of these days I might do a tutorial on Google SketchUp, so let me know in the comments if that's something you'd like to see. From Google SketchUp I exported the sides into Lightburn, which is my laser program, and I cut those out on the laser. Now my laser can't cut out a profile this large, so I broke up the template into 3 pieces and used some CA glue to recombine them into a single piece. Upon review I probably should have included some locking tabs to make this a little easier, however a few pieces of scrap MDF glued over the seams is more than sufficient to secure this together. Okay, so we have our template, it's now done, very happy with that. It looks really great. Now I also understand that not everyone's going to have a laser, so I am still going to include a file for you to be able to print out a side piece on our printer that you can then assemble. A little bit of sticky tape, then you can stick that to your piece, or if you want to make it as a template, stick it to your template piece. Use a jigsaw, maybe even a bandsaw to cut around it, and then obviously trim it up to the lines, and then, you know, create your own template. So that's fine, absolutely will work fine, but obviously we've got a little bit of technology now, so I've gone ahead and done that on the laser. But if you do want to build this yourself and don't have a laser, then obviously, look, this is the way to do it. The timber I'll be using to construct the arcade machine are these 18mm pine panels I sourced from my local big box store. The original plan was to use 16mm MDF panels, however it turns out that my local Bunnings has decided to no longer stock this thickness of MDF in small sheets. They are only stocking the full 4x8 feet panels, and there was no way I was going to buy a full panel for this project. I've calculated that if I maximise the cuts here, that I can probably get away with making this out of just 2 panels. Each panel costs $39, so it's not too bad if you're attempting to do this on the cheap. But if you are looking to go even cheaper, then MDF will probably be the way to go. Using a jigsaw, I'm going to rough cut the side panels, cutting close to the lines but not going over them. I'm then going to clean this up over at the router table using a templating bit. This is my preferred method for doing this type of repeated shape cutting, but if you don't have a router, then you can go straight to just using the jigsaw only. Make sure you use a good blade and one that is designed for clean cutting the material you have. Also make sure to set the correct speed for the type of blade you have. It's very easy to get caught into the thought that faster is better, but in most cases, slower is often better. Now after rough cutting using the jigsaw, I did a little bit of tidy up work over at the bandsaw. This just means that when I use the templating bit over at the router table, I don't have to remove too much material. Again, this is not necessary, you can do this all with just the jigsaw alone. A bit of double-sided tape is all that's needed to make sure that the template stays put during routing. When it comes to template routing, pay special attention to the direction of the grain. Take small passes and don't try to take off too much material. Pine is really soft and generally very forgiving, but it can chip out if you're too aggressive. Of course, if you're going to be using MDF, then it's not something you need to worry about. Next I'll mark out the placement of the panels. This will give me a reference line that I can use to attach some cleats that are going to help with the assembly and add a little bit of strength. The reveal I'm going for here is 6mm all around. I'm now marking a further 18mm from the guidelines I've just made. This represents the panel thickness and will be where I attach my cleats to. Off camera, I cut out some strips of pine on the table saw that are about 15mm in width. It doesn't have to be any specific width, it's just what I went with. These will form the cleats that will help support the panels. Now these cleats can be placed pretty much anywhere on the inside line, and you don't have to go to the extreme like I did to cover every part of the line. You just have to strategically place them in key areas where support will be needed. With the cleats now in place, I can focus on the panels, and I'm going to start with the control panel and the monitor panel. There is a beveled angle I need to cut here so that the two panels, the control panel and the monitor panel, meet nicely, and I do that by using a simple bevel guide. Then at the table saw, I can adjust the angle of the blade to match the bevel. This means that I don't need to measure, no trying to dial in the right miter, we can just reference from the actual workpiece. The result is a perfectly aligned miter cut. I then repeat this process for the monitor panel using the exact same technique. For the control board, I've decided to try something new. The original plan was to use paint, but I had the idea of trying some of this faux carbon fiber vinyl wrap that I found on eBay. It has this really nice texture and effect, and it's pretty easy to apply. Just cut the film to size and then apply it like a sticker. And then once applied, I just trim the edges with a utility knife. The reason I wanted to apply the film first is that I wanted to be able to cut the buttonholes directly into the vinyl to leave a nicer finish. I wasn't sure which size buttons I was going to use for this project, as there appeared to be sort of two common sizes, a 30mm and a 24mm. I made the template for both sizes just in case, but in the end I ended up going with the 24mm button. I just used a laser to cut a bushing to reduce the template to the right size buttonholes. And then from there I used a Forstner bit to mark onto the vinyl where the holes needed to be cut. With the hole locations marked, I cut them all out on the drill press. You can of course use just a normal drill if you don't have a drill press, but a drill press will be more accurate. The vinyl cut really easily and left some very crisp edges, so if you're going to go down this path, I do recommend considering doing it in this order of operations as well.
Okay, so it's time to now cut the panel that houses the monitor. And I've already marked out the circumference here. This is the monitor that I'm going to be using. It's a second-hand 19-inch LCD, 4:3 ratio LCD that I picked up on eBay for about $50. So they're not expensive. They are becoming a little bit harder to find, but still very inexpensive. And if you have a look on things like, Facebook Marketplace, or I don't know, eBay, or I guess Craigslist, I guess is the American equivalent kind of thing, you can still find plenty of these type of monitors around. You can of course use any kind of monitor you want. For an arcade, it's generally recommended, they say, that a 4:3 ratio monitor is what you need, but I mean,
You can use whatever you want, but this one's a 19-inch. This is what we're going to use. From here I can use the same technique as I did before. Jigsawing out the bulk of the material, attaching the template to the frame, and then using a template bit on the router table to clean up the cut. The end result is a really nice friction fit for the monitor. From there I proceeded with cutting the rest of the panels. Okay, I've done a very rough dry fit. It's just sitting on top of the bench here, so nothing's attached. So you have to be a bit careful that it's not going to fall over. But I just wanted to get a rough idea of the fit. Everything looks really good so far. Monitor's looking good. So far, so good. So the next thing that I want to do or need to do is we need to consider the T-Moulding. So a classic arcade look is this stuff. So T-Moulding. And as you can see, that's why it's called T-Moulding. Now I've got some red, I've got some black. I haven't decided on the final color yet, but what we need to do is use a special bit. Well, not really a special bit, but a slot cutting bit, as you can see here. And what that's going to do is cut a slot around the profile of each of the sides, and then I'm going to do one in the front there, and that's where our T-Moulding is going to slot in. So that's my next job. And hopefully that goes according to plan. I've not used a T-slot cutter before, so I hope that not too complicated, but should be all right. So that's the next thing to do. Next I'm going to assemble the upper panels, specifically where the upper cabinet box connects. Nothing complicated here, it's a simple matter of butt joining the pieces, applying a bit of glue and then driving in a few brad nails. Next on the list is to create a mounting bracket for the monitor. It's going to need some support from behind, and I'll do that by adapting the bracket that the monitor already comes with. Most monitors these days have a mounting bracket or a VESA mounting system that will allow you to either create your own bracket or, like I am here, reuse the one that came with the monitor. So it's time to think about how we're going to mount the monitor to the front bezel. So the monitor I've chosen was deliberate because it has this removable plate and these screw holes here. So I believe it's a VESA standard. So this would normally clip on the back of the monitor stand here. But instead what we're going to do is we'll use this to mount our monitor. So this will normally go in here like this and just clips in like so. I've got some strips of scrap on the side here, and I've got a piece that is going to go across here, and I'll just slowly reduce the thickness of this until it's kissing just the back of the monitor here. So once that happens, we can drill some holes, mount that to it, and then that will securely keep the monitor in place. Next is to attach the bracket to our custom mount, and to do this I use some double-sided tape to temporarily attach the bracket to the mount. Once temporarily attached, I drilled out the mounting holes and used a couple of bolts to secure the bracket to the mount. Just a word of warning here as well, to be careful not to damage your LCD here. Put something underneath your LCD like a towel or a soft cloth, and make sure that there are no wayward tools underneath that could crack your LCD. Ask me how I know this. Now, it was at this point that I kind of made a design decision, and that I really liked the fake carbon fiber look and the texture, and that I would actually go ahead and cover the entire unit with it. I would then pair this with the red T-Moulding, and I thought that this will give it a really nice added contrast. I had plenty of vinyl wrap left to cover the entire project, so I started with the monitor bezel here. Now, up until this point, I'd only done that one panel, the control panel, and this probably gave me a bit of a false sense of security because wrapping this project was more difficult than building the entire cabinet. In the end, I found that working in smaller panels or smaller sections was best, and that you could overlap the vinyl pretty easily to make it look relatively seamless. This would become a necessity later on for the side panels, as you'll find out soon. Alright, you join us at a very exciting moment. So we finally have a bit of a, we'll call it a dry assembly. Everything looks pretty good. The process of wrapping all of this, dear Lord, I mean, I'm sure there are people watching that are familiar with wrapping, maybe in the automotive industry or something like that, but I mean, it's an entire art form. So very appreciative of the people who are able to do this very successfully. So that was an entire day to get to that stage just to sort of wrap all of this type of stuff. But it's looking very, very, very clean, very sharp, very nice. So let's go on a quick tour just to see how everything is aligning and fitting. So if we go around to the back. So we've got our monitor in. I haven't bolted it exactly in yet because obviously I want to take it back out yet. But yeah, everything's looking really neat. We do have to clean up this little tiny gap that's developed. It's just because this bit here isn't very thick, and obviously the wood grain direction's going this way. I probably should have thought about that and tilted it this way when I cut out that panel for that one. But that's all right, fine. We would have had the same problem on this side anyway. So it is what it is, but we'll just we'll close up that gap by joining those two together, and that'll be fine, okay? But other than that, our cleats are really doing a good job of keeping everything in alignment and slotted in. So I'm really happy with how that's going to work. Now you might be wondering how we're going to join this all together. So I'm just going to glue this together, and I'm probably going to just run a couple of brad nails into here because I'm going to wrap the sides as well. So I think that once that's all done, completely black, it'll look really good. We'll use the T-Moulding to do a contrast color. That'll go all around here, and a strip across the bottom here. And then I've got a whole bunch of decal stickers that I'll use to sort of, you know, give it a bit of personality. So I wouldn't say we're on the home front, but we're certainly well past the halfway point. So from here, it's time to try and assemble this. So with the cabinet assembled, it's time to wrap the sides, and boy did I screw this up. I thought it would be a good idea to use my original template side to measure the cutout for each panel, which was fine for one of the sides, but I'll let you take a good guess at the mistake that I'm about to make. are a dickhead. So I cut out the template, but of course I forgot to turn the template the other way around because obviously I need to do this side now. So I doubt there's enough left in any of this. Oh, maybe I have to stitch this. I'll have to try and stitch this with 2 pieces, I think, or multiple pieces. This is one of those moments where you just want to pack it all in, but I'll make this work. I am not going to go and buy some more of this stuff. I'm going to make this work if it kills me. So I ended up covering the left side with 4 different offcut panels. Luckily, there was just enough to make this happen. So the lesson here is pay close attention to your left and right. All right, here we go. So we've made do with what we had left, and I think we've done an okay job. So if I stand back here, I don't think you can really tell there's actually 4 separate little panels in there. So if we go up closer, you can see a seam. There's one here, and there's one here. You can see that one a bit easier. And that one you can definitely see. So there's a patch I had to put in because no amount of smoothing or ironing out could I get the big ass bubble that was forming there. It was all folded. It was part of where there was a crease that I showed you earlier. So if I stand back, looks fine. And obviously now the plan will be is that I've got a whole bunch of gaming decals and stickers that I'm going to put on here. And obviously, well, that's going to cover that patch there. I'll put one that will cover most of that. And in the end, it'll just be your and my little secret that was even a screw up in the first place. With our mistake largely mitigated, it was time to move on to installing our T-Moulding. This wasn't complicated. It's a simple matter of tapping the ribbon on the T-Moulding into the previously cut slot into the side of the panels. When it comes to the rounded edges, to get a nice tight corner, you need to cut out the ribbon to allow it to bend. So I continued around the cabinet, cutting, tapping, and of course cutting out some relief for the corners. Until of course I had a finished cabinet. Okay, now it's really starting to look like a cabinet, isn't it? So the first thing that we need to do is to think about the buttons now. Now the buttons that I've bought is from a kit from eBay. It includes 2 joysticks and a whole bunch of buttons. It's not the most expensive kit. It's also not the cheapest kit. I think I paid about $75 for this. One of the reasons why I did choose it is because there are lights. And of course, you need lights in an arcade cabinet. So only one thing to do is to go ahead and do that now. Buttons are pretty straightforward to install. You just insert them into your cut hole, then use the plastic nut to secure it to the control panel. For the joystick, I did have to cut a small section of the mounting bracket to allow room for one of the buttons, which I did off camera. It didn't hurt the mounting at all, we still can get 4 screws in, but you may want to consider this with a bit more thought than I did if you're building your own regarding the button placement. So our buttons are now in place. The next thing that we're going to do obviously is connect this all up. Now the wiring isn't too complicated, there's no soldering that you have to do, but it can get a little bit messy. Now each button has 4 plugs, 2 for the input and 2 for the light. So there's going to be a lot of cables that are running here. Now you don't need to know anything about soldering here, but you are going to need to make sure that you can keep track of all the wires because there's probably going to be quite a lot now. And obviously we have a 2-player configuration here, so we have twice as many as we normally would. So I'm going to go ahead and wire this up and see how we go. With the wiring in place, albeit a little bit untidy for now, I wanted to put in the base. Off camera, I cut out an access panel so I could access the control panel from the bottom. I also made sure that the bottom was just screwed in and not glued in so that I had the option of removing the base completely in case I needed even more access later on. So there you have it, my take on the bar top arcade cabinet. This has been a really fun project. It's been both challenging and sometimes frustrating. Certainly I've learned a lot from this one, and should I attempt another one, I think I can make it even better. But as a first attempt, I think that this one's pretty good. Now there's a topic in this video that I'm not going to cover, so if you're interested in understanding the software that's required to run something like this, then I'm not going to cover that in this video. That subject is a category in its own, and there is a plethora of online resources, YouTube videos and other that go on in-depth looks into the software that's required to run an arcade machine. This video was all about how to build an arcade cabinet, or specifically how I went about building an arcade cabinet. Now, if you're interested in building this cabinet or one very similar, then I'm going to include my Google SKETCHUP file free of charge. That same Google SKETCHUP file is what I use to create all of the templates to build this machine. Now, I've always given away all of my Google SKETCHUP files or plans. I've never charged for them. So all I ask is that if you do get value from them and they've been useful to you, then maybe consider becoming a channel member, or at least hitting that subscribe button. If you've made it this far into the video, drop me a comment. Let me know what your favorite arcade machine or arcade game was growing up. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Now, if you don't mind, I have some coins to collect. Bugger.